Okay, so you can see my screen, right? Retrieving data using select statement.
Yes.
Okay, so basically today we are going to be talking about an important rather the most important topic in SQL, which is the select statement. So what basically the select statement does is that it gives us the ability to what is known as retrieve information from the database. And essentially what that means is that if you have some information regarding a customer or a transaction or anything of that kind, your select is your tool or your weapon in order to be able to retrieve data. So being able to use select appropriately and being able to use all the things that you use along with select, which is the joins, the group bys, the nested queries, that basically constitutes like 80% of SQL. So the way the chapters are structured is that initially what is going to happen is that it's going to be did somebody join us? Hello, Shashikant? Shashikant, can you hear me? Hello, Shashikant, can you hear me? Just 1 second. I'm on chat with him. So okay. So for the benefit of Shashikant, I will briefly talk about what we discussed in the last chapter, in the last class. So in the last class was what is known as you know, an overview of Oracle database and its capabilities, and why it is called a relational database. That is what we discussed, for the last hour yesterday. And today what we are going to be discussing is retrieving data using the SQL select statement. And this chapter basically, as I was telling a couple of minutes back, select along with things like the join, the group by, and the inner nested select statements constitute 80% of what is known as what SQL is all about. Okay, so let us briefly talk about the objectives of this chapter. So the objectives of this chapter is to list the capabilities of the SQL select statement. So you will see what the SQL statement can do for you. And the second one is to execute a basic select statement. The third one, which is differentiate between SQL and ISQL plus, you can ignore for now, because nobody uses the ISQL plus in a real office environment when you go for a job. So anything related to ISQL plus in this course we will skip. Okay, any questions, Vinoda?
No, not at this time, Suji.
Okay, any questions from you, Shrikant? Okay, so let's now briefly try and understand what we were just talking about, capabilities of the SQL statement. So what do you mean by capability of the SQL statement? That is what we are trying to discuss right now. And the capabilities of the SQL statement are projection and selection. Okay, these are the two major capabilities of the select statement, followed by the join. Okay, so what we will do in the next slide is that we will try to understand what projection is, what selection is, and what join is. So if you see here, what we have done is that we have the departments table. What do we have? We have the departments table. And the way what we have done in this case is that we have used a select, okay, followed by a star, followed by a from, and we have written down the name of the table. Okay, so let's try and understand what a table is. A table is nothing else but a structure inside the database which consists of columns as well as rows. So what you see here is basically a table, and the name of this table is departments. And in this particular case, what we are doing is that we are selecting from departments. Now what the star indicates is that we are selecting all columns from the departments table. So in this particular case, what we have done is that if there were 10 columns in departments, it would have selected 10 columns. If there were 100 columns in department, it would have selected all the 100 columns. Okay, so then what is projection that we were talking about right now? So let's come to that. Now in this particular case, you see that there is no select star written. Can you see that? There is no select star written, but in here there is a select star, but here there is no select star written. But instead what we have done is that we have selected two columns, department ID and location ID. So instead of writing star, what we did select department ID comma location ID. So in this particular case, what we did is that we had 5 columns in the table, but we chose to basically, the word is project only 2 columns. That means only department ID and location ID was taken. So so if you come here, what we are talking about is projection. So by just selecting 2 columns from the entire table, what we have essentially done is that we are using the projection capability of the SQL statement. Okay, so what is the projection capability of the SQL statement? The ability to select only columns that are relevant to us from a given table is called as the projection property of the SQL statement. Any questions for me on this topic, Vinoda?
No, Sujit.
Okay, so then let's try and understand what the other thing is, that is the selection, this thing. Okay, before we go there, let us talk about some properties of the select statement. So SQL statements are not case sensitive. So let us say I write select in lowercase or uppercase, it will not matter. Okay, and as you saw in the earlier case, this select statement has been broken into 2 lines. So a select statement can be on 1 or more lines. So that is the second point. Keywords cannot be abbreviated or split. So let's try and understand what a keyword is. This word from is a keyword. Okay, so I cannot write fr on one line and om on the other line. That is not allowed. So what this is saying, keywords cannot be abbreviated or split across lines. Clauses are usually placed on separate lines. In this case, there is no clause yet in this statement, but what they are basically saying is that if we had to extend this SQL statement by adding something more to it, then that would have been ideally can be placed on a new line. What I'm trying to tell you is that that is only a recommendation. There is no real necessity that this from department or anything else that you're going to add should be on on the same line or next line. You can always write it on the same line, it will still work, but that is just a recommendation. Why? Because that is called indenting, and the process of indenting enhances readability. So in this particular case, you're seeing is that I'm just selecting 2 columns and I'm having one table. But when you go into the real-time environment, and when you are what is known as actually working in offices and all that, what is going to happen is that you're going to encounter extremely large tables, sometimes tables with 100, 200, 300 columns, and you are going to be joining with several other tables with several hundred columns. And therefore what indenting does is that it basically improves your ability and the ability of somebody else who is reading the code that you have written to understand what you are saying. Okay, So this is ISQL and SQL plus, so we can ignore that for now. So we'll just ignore this. So just let me start my SQL developer. We'll see some real examples. So the next thing is arithmetic expressions. Okay. So we all know from our school days what arithmetic expressions are, right? The addition, the subtraction, the multiplication, the division, all these are what? These are nothing else but what is known as arithmetic expressions. So the question that would arise in our mind typically would be, why the question, why do I need to worry about an addition or a subtraction or a multiplication or a divide in SQL? So the reason for that is primarily because you can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division inside SQL, and you can use these operators to do that activity. Okay, so how we do that? Let me show you. See here, as is written, there is salary plus 300. I'm actually going to show you. Is my SQL developer visible to everybody? Vinoda?
Yes, Sujit, I'm able to see it.
Yeah. Shashi? Okay, so here what I'm doing is that I'm doing select star from employees. Okay, and what it is going to give me is that it is going to give me all the records of people in the employees table. And now what I have decided to do is that I have decided to use the projection property of the SQL. I have decided to use the projection property of the SQL statement. What I do is that I take first name, last name, then I take hire date, and I take salary from employees. So what I'm doing is that I'm just taking a given number of columns and I'm showing it here on the screen. So what I have done, I have used the projection property of the SQL statement. Now we just learned earlier that indentation helps to better understand the code. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to indent this to make it easier, like how we would work in real time, when we work on jobs. So this is how ideally a statement would look if you were working in a real-time environment. So what do I have here? I have indented this code. This code is a lot more easier to see and understand in order to be able to what is known as in order to see the data. So now what I want to do is that I want to use the arithmetic operator. What I want to use that I want to use the arithmetic operator. So I have salary, and what I'm going to do is that salary plus I'm going to give some X amount of money. So what I'm going to do in this particular case is that I'm going to give a 10% bonus. What I'm doing here, I'm giving so what I'm giving is that I'm giving a Diwali bonus. So you can see what happened here is that I have salary. I multiplied salary with 1.10, which is basically what? It is basically a 10% hike, and this new salary I gave it what is known as a name called Diwali bonus. And basically what I'm having is that I'm having Diwali bonus, which is nothing else but 10% more of salary. Now the important point to remember is that as I use this arithmetic operator, this column called Diwali bonus does not really actually exist in the table. Okay, please understand this, that this column Diwali bonus does not actually exist in the table, but is only temporarily present in order for us to display in this select statement. Okay, are we clear on this point, Vinoda?
Yes, Sujit, it's clear. I mean, this Diwali bonus being an alias. My question is the next step. Like, if
Yeah.
I have this particular query inside like a another query that masks this, so if I use this alias, would it be okay, or that will give me an
Yeah, so you're basically asking if I did select,
yeah.
and you're basically saying if you wrote an outer select, right?
Right.
Right. So in this particular case, you just need to write, you could do two things. You could either do select star, which will also take care of
Mhm.
this, or
Okay.
if you are actually want to write all the names, then in that event, as you said, you could simply use Diwali bonus instead of
Okay.
using. uh,
Yeah, we can use this. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is that you see, in order to be able to use it, uh, you cannot have spaces. Like how I have space here.
Okay, it should be underscore or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So for that reason, what I have to do is that I have to make it an underscore here and
Mm-hmm.
use it. So in this event, what will happen is that it will work.
Okay. Okay.
You see what we have done here? We have basically
Okay.
referenced this Diwali bonus over here, and it is showing up,
Okay.
this alias, whatever I created as an outer this thing. So later
Okay.
on in the chapters, when we do, we will come to a concept of what is known as an inline view. So
Mm-hmm.
this thing in Oracle is called an inline view.
Okay.
So we will see more examples like these, in which what is going to happen is that we will see various ways in which this is used.
Okay.
So
I just don't want to jump into
yeah,
the
no
next
problem.
thing.
No, 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 no,
But
no problem. See, what I'm trying to tell you is that since you're working and since you're using this knowledge I'm providing you to, use it at work, if anything relevant shows up here, don't wait for me to reach that chapter. Jump in immediately because, that is going to give you maximum benefit to your work. So I don't want to take that away from you. That is okay. I will, we can definitely accommodate that.
sure. In the second select, I mean, where we have the salary and Diwali bonus. If I have A or B over there, I mean, an alias for the whole select statement after the brackets.
Okay. So this
Yeah,
is
that right there.
like,
Yeah. So what does that exactly mean, and how would really help me in having this in the outer query?
yeah, so basically in this particular case this doesn't matter, but
Okay.
what it actually is meant to do is that you can write a dot employee,
Uh-huh.
b dot employee. You can actually give, I'll explain one second. A dot employee, let me just write this: a dot employee, a dot employee, a dot employee, a dot salary, a dot Diwali bonus. Now let us say you had something, another table here.
Okay.
Let me call this departments.
Okay.
I will call this D.
Okay.
Now this is a little advanced, but I will just show you. I will come to it. Now this
Okay.
whole thing is an A.
Right.
Okay. So
Mhm.
what I'm going to do is that let me introduce a new column here called departments because I need to do a join
Yeah.
department ID. And over here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a dot department ID. Okay. And
Okay.
what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to do a dot department ID equal to b dot sorry, it's D, right? D dot department ID. Okay. Now in this particular case, what I'm doing, this represents one table. Okay. And this represents the second table. And I'm joining this A, which is basically the department ID from here. Okay, which is the department ID from here with the department ID in departments. And let us say if I wanted B dot department ID, let us say I wanted the department ID from the departments table instead of the employees table, then in that case I would use, sorry, I should use D dot. So what this thing really does is that it basically, number one, gives you the ability to reference these columns by writing a dot.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the primary objective of doing this. When I am writing a select which does not require any further activity like join or anything, there is no need to have this.
Okay.
But when I have to, like this, I need to do a join or something of that kind, then in that event, what happens is that I have to give this inline view a name A, and then I do a dot department ID, as a join here, which helps me to utilize information inside this and continue with my work. And of course, a dot or d dot, depending on what you use, will show up in the outer select. Yeah, you have a doubt? Go ahead. Yeah, Vinodha.
Uh, Not from me, Sujit.
Okay, okay.
I'm fine. I understand.
Shashi, what about you? Okay, so so let's move on to. Okay, so what we were discussing really here was arithmetic operators, and basically over here the example what they did is that they did salary plus 300. In my example, what I did is that I did salary into, I gave a 10% raise, which is nothing else but the Diwali bonus. So what we are basically trying to say is that if a given column is of a numeric data type, then in that event what we can do is that we can use what is known as the arithmetic operators to do operations on what is known as on that data, thus giving us a different result from what we currently have. So we can use all these arithmetic operators like plus, minus, multiplication, and division. So here is another example of what we have seen. Here what we are doing, we are saying that we have the salary, that is the monthly salary, and then we are multiplying it by 12 in order to get the annual salary, and then we are adding 100. So in this case what happened, salary, which is the monthly salary, multiplied by 12, which gives us the annual salary, plus $100 bonus. Okay, now what is being showed here is an example of what is known as changing the default operator precedence. So as we have all studied in school, what basically happens is that multiplication has higher precedence than addition. So in this case 12 is going to get multiplied with salary. Okay, so what is going to happen, 12 is going to get multiplied with salary. But if you want to change that, what you can do is that you can simply use these brackets, do salary plus 100 and multiply it by 12. The net result is basically going to be is that you're going to get a different result, a different output. So over here you can see king salary is different from what you can see under 2. So whatever salary you can see here is different from here because the way it has been calculated is different. So if you want to alter the default operator precedence, which is basically multiplication and division has higher precedence than addition and subtraction, you basically use the brackets and you change the operator precedence. Okay, any questions here? Okay. Okay, so now we are talking about a very, very important concept. Okay, and this concept is called the concept of null. So many times what is going to happen is that let us say that you're filling a form, and when you're filling that form, what is going to happen is that there is some information that may not be applicable to you, or you may not know the answer to that. So basically what you would do is that you would leave that part of the form not filled. Now porting that to an Oracle table, what is going to basically happen is that a null inside a table is a value which is not available. So let us say somebody's birth date is not available. Okay, so if somebody's birth date is not available, what is going to be there in that column? So what is going to be there in that column is a null. So a null basically is a value that is unknown. That is the example we saw. A person's birth date we don't know. That is unknown. Okay. The second thing what a null value can be is inapplicable. So let us say I have a column called gender. Okay. But what is happening is that I'm filling information regarding a corporation. So a corporation does not have a gender. So let us say if I'm filling a form and it is asking for gender, basically what it means is that for a company, the gender is not applicable. So a scenario where an information is not applicable to a given item, in that case what will happen is that we will not fill that information, and then in that scenario what we will say is that it is inapplicable. Okay, so one case we saw is birth date. We don't know a person's date, so it is unknown, so we can put a null there. Okay, second is inapplicable, which basically means that it doesn't apply to that situation, like a company not having a gender. The third thing is unavailable. So let us say that you went to Walmart and you did some shopping. Okay, you did some shopping and you went away, you went home. So when that transaction enters the Walmart database, they don't know who you are really. They don't know your first name, they don't know your last name, and because they don't have that information is basically unavailable. So when information is unavailable, what that basically means is that that information, that place, that information about you, because they don't have, it will be populated with something what is known as null. And finally is unassigned. So it may so happen is that as a process, unassigned means maybe a kid is a kid is born and their birth of date or a social security number, let us say social security number, is still not assigned to that kid. So basically in this scenario what we are saying is that it is not available now but is going to be available at some point in time. So till such a time that it becomes available, we are going to populate that column with a null. So the reason that I am talking so much about this is because many times when you go to work, a lot of people have a lot of confusion about what null is, and you have to remember this very very clearly what I explained right now, that it is a value that is unavailable, unassigned, unknown, or inapplicable. It is not the same as zero, and it is not same as space, because zero is a value and blank space is also a value in Oracle. Okay, so before I go ahead, I would like to take any questions because this is a very important topic before I show you something more. Vinodha, any questions on this?
No, Suji. Okay.
Shashi? Okay. Um so let's try and look at some examples of null. Okay, and what I want you both to tell me is why, you know whether what under what category of null. So in this particular case you can see that all this data is null. Okay, over here in this database, because of the setting, what is happening is that it is showing you as null in bracket, but if you go real time to a real production database, it will not show null like this. It will basically not show anything over here. You understanding what I'm saying? Over here the word null is written, which is actually something that the SQL developer is actually putting for us to see. But the reality is that on this column that I've highlighted in blue, there is really nothing over there. Not even the word null. Okay. So in this particular case, let's look at this record. Okay, I have Sheila, I have S King. Okay, this is AD president and the commission percent is null. Okay, so what I want any one of you to tell me is, what scenario is this? Is this unavailable, unassigned, unknown, or inapplicable? Which one of these apply to this null?
No, I think the commission percentage is some value and she should gain it. So I think it's unavailable for this particular
Yeah,
scenario.
okay, so that's actually a very good answer. So let me give you some background which will help you refine. So commission is applicable only to salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, commission is applicable only to salespeople. Okay, so anybody who is not a salesman, sales manager, or a sales rep, they don't have commission because the other people are not selling. So if an individual is a clerk, he doesn't have a commission, right?
Okay,
If
right.
if he's an accountant, he doesn't have a commission. If he's a programmer, he doesn't have a commission. But if he is, this is actually, some updates that I did to the data. But if you are a salesperson, then you have commission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Then in that case, it should be unapplicable.
that is right. So in this particular case, it is inapplicable. Why? Because in this particular case, what has happened is that the commission percentage does not apply. Okay, so this is the way you have to always think when you see a null value, to understand as to under what categorization this is null. And what it will do is that whenever you have a confusion about the null thing, as you will think like this, it will become really clear as to why it is null. Shashi, any questions on this? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so we were talking about null. Let's talk a little more about null. So if you see here, this is 12 into salary into commission percentage. And if you can see for king and coacher, when I multiply salary with 12 and multiply with commission percentage, the final result over here is null. Let me show it to you here. Okay, so let us say I do EMPLO employee ID, comma, first name, comma, last name, comma, salary, comma, commission, PCT from employees. So what I'm doing is that I'm doing a couple of things. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to right click. There is a way to, okay, now I'm going to indent this. If you indent, reading code becomes easy. Okay, so I have commission percentage. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do salary into 12 annual salary. So what did I get? I got the annual salary. Why? Because I applied an arithmetic operator over here. But what I forgot to apply the commission percentage. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to also multiply this by the commission percentage. Now let's see what happens. So now what you're observing is that the annual salaries become null for all those people where the commission percentage is null. Look at this. Wherever there is a commission percentage, we have a salary. So the question is, what really happened here? So So the important thing about null is that any operation with a null value will always result in an output of null. Okay, anything. So in this case, what it says, arithmetic expressions containing a null value evaluate to null. So what that means is that if I do any operation with any field that contains null value, no matter what I do, the final answer will always be null. Okay, so that is why null, we have to be very careful when working with null, when we multiply with columns containing null, because they can really cause our answers to go bad. So there are certain null handling functions that are provided, and what we will do is that we will see how these null handling functions are used later in the subsequent chapters. Any question regarding the nulling of what we did here?
No questions on the null actually. So in this scenario,
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. So in this scenario, probably if I have a case statement like case when and if commission percentage not null or is, can I have that as a zero or
that is right.
uh,
That is right. So in your particular case, what you're saying is that you are going to use a case statement to selectively apply the multiplication,
mhm.
where the commission percentage is actually applicable. There you would put the commission percentage, and where it is not applicable you would skip multiplying with commission percentage. That's what you're
Okay.
saying, right?
Yeah, right. And for this, having that as a zero or a space, or how that, I mean, how is that we can conclude with that point?
Right.
Like in
Yeah,
this scenario, I clearly see that it should be a number and should be zero, and anything multiplied by zero should be zero, right?
that is right.
And we don't want that.
Yeah, so we will come. So just for a quick understanding, I will just show you one null handling
Mhm.
function. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
there is a null handling. So basically, what Oracle does is that it provides us with null handling functions to handle this situation. So in this case, I have used a null handling. I can do it using the case that you said, but there
Mhm.
is an easier way of doing it by using NVL. It says that if commission percentage is null, it will replace it by zero.
Okay.
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 So
Okay.
basically what you can do is that you can use null handling functions, and
Mhm.
what null handling functions will do for you is that it will handle it. We have actually 4 or 5 null handling functions that Oracle gives, and we will see them in detail in the next chapter, wherein depending on what kind of scenario you encounter, you will use a different null handling function.
Okay.
Okay, so does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And as you said, the case statement also can be used to achieve the same objective, but it will be a little more effort. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so the next topic, any questions from you, Shashi? Oh, okay. So let's talk about column aliases. Okay, so let's try and understand what a column alias is. A column alias, we just saw an example of a column alias here, right? What did we see? We saw I did salary into 1.10 as Diwali bonus. So what is this? This is a alias. Also, you saw here I use something that is also an alias. So basically what a column alias is, that it helps us to rename a given column heading. So here if I remove this, if I let us say I remove this and I do this, if I remove this and I do this, let us say, what's going to happen is that basically you see whatever I wrote in this select statement, that is going to show up salary into 12 into NVL. But by using an alias, I can make this look better. Using an alias, what I can do is that I can make it look better. So especially when it comes to calculations, you can it is useful to avoid these cryptic names, but rather you can use names that are explanatory, and you can use the as keyword, or even if, like as I have shown here, or even if you don't use the as keyword, it doesn't really matter. But the only thing you have to remember is that if you have space, then in that case you need to use double quotes. Okay, so if let us say I do this, and if I try to run this won't work. Why? Because there is a space here. So in that scenario, what I have to do, I have to put these in double quotes, and then what will happen is that the alias should work. Okay, but if I didn't have this space, this space here, then in that case this double quote is not required. So this is what about. And finally there is one more thing. Many times people want uppercase, lowercase. Now uppercase, lowercase is possible only if you use double quotes. You see, it is in the exact case. Now if I remove these quotes, what's going to happen is that in the output everything will come in uppercase. Can you see here? Everything is come in uppercase. So if I want to enforce the case, then in that case, I have to use the double quote. So you may be wondering why all this is very important. So in a lot of companies, what happens is that a lot of reports are run using SQL, and what is used as these column names and column aliases actually shows up in data files. Okay, so they would run a spool file with a lot of select statements. They would end up inside a data file, and then this data file would then get opened inside Excel. A lot of companies do that even today, and for them formatting for a lot of people is important. And what this does is that it basically gives us that ability to do that. Okay, so any questions on this? Okay, so let's move forward to the next this thing. So here what they have, so here they're talking about the same thing that I just spoke about, the name, and when to use double quotes, when there is a space, and also the case. So it's everything that we just discussed. Just take a look at this. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, let's move to the next thing. Okay, so the next what we are seeing is the concatenation operator. So a concatenation operator, as the name suggests, is basically an operator which basically helps you to combine two columns. Okay, so let's look at the employees table. I have the first name and I have the last name in two separate columns. What do I have? I have the first name and the last name in two separate columns. But my end user told me that he doesn't want to see it this way. He wants to see the first name and the last name concatenated, which means together. So in that event, what I will do is that I can do this. What is this over here? It is nothing else but the concatenation operator, and here I will give it an alias called full name. I have given it an alias called full name. Okay, I forgot a comma here. I put a comma. Okay, now I'm running this. So what can you see here? Sheila and Kimal have been joined together as what? Full name. But there is a problem here. Why? Because there is no space between. So I put another concatenation operator and I append it to space. Okay, then finally somebody tells me that they want a comma. Okay, so let's try and understand what we did here. We used the concatenation operator. The concatenation operator we used initially, what we did is that we used the concatenation operator and joined first name to last name. When we did that, what happened is that the first name and the last name, they got joined to each other. We gave it an alias full name. But the problem with this is that there is no space between the first name and the last name. So what we need is that we need space. So how do we introduce space? That is the question. So the way we introduce space is that we concatenate space to the first name and last name in between. So what I have done here, I have concatenated this space I have concatenated space to first name and I have concatenated space to last name, and thus what I have done is that I have created first name space last name, and instead of the space here I could have instead just put a comma also. So what would happen is that I would get first name comma last name. So basically what I'm doing here is that I'm using the concatenation operator to combine the first name and the last name to make the look and feel of the output compatible to what the people in my company need. So what the concatenation operator does is that it helps us to join or combine columns together with the goal of improving the way we want to display. So this is another example. Last name concat job ID as employees. So in this case you can see King got joined to AD press, and here they did not use the concatenation with the space. So for that reason you can see there is no space between King and AD press the way we have here because of this. Vinoda, any question?
No, Sujit. Yeah,
Sure.
but I came across this concatenation between two queries,
Okay.
so probably we can take that up later.
Yeah, okay, sure. Sure. So was this a concatenation between two queries or two columns?
Two queries.
Two queries. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we can take that up later.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
relevant.
Okay, sure. So this is something that is going to come in later. So though the double pipe, two vertical bar is the concatenation operator, Oracle also gives a function called concat that we can use. But using the double pipe is far easier than using concat, and for that reason the double pipe is very popular. uh, is very popular way to concat data. Okay, so now the next topic that we are going to talk about is the literals. So let's look at some examples to explain. So what you see here, okay, what you see here between the single quote here and single quote here is a literal. So a literal in other words means words that we have used. Okay, so in this particular case what we have done is that we use the last name, we use the concatenation operator here, and then what we did is that we wrote is a, and then we wrote the job ID. In the previous example that I showed you some time back over here, what I did is that I added a what is known as a comma, but I could have written anything here what I like. There is nothing that stops me from writing, so I could basically write anything I like. And what that basically means is that this piece that is there between these two quotes is a literal or a character literal, meaning it will repeat as is without any change, and it is mainly used in order to what is known as improve the display. So in this particular case, if you are giving a report on employees designations, so what you see here basically is that King is ADA president, or in some other report which is sales data, which would say is that employee Mark had a sales of $50,000, employee David had a sale of $90,000. So you can basically create reports that have verbal language in it. So you could use a last name and then say have a sale of, and then the sales figure is here, you would get all that information. So this is nothing else but what is known as a character literal. Uh, so this is another way of writing a character literal. We won't discuss it at this point because it's a little too advanced, and nobody really even uses it. So we will skip this for now, and if later we have time we will come back to it. 99% of the people they use this as the way to apply literals. We'll skip this for now. If required we will come back to it later. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, so now we are going to talk about a very what is known as a point which is very frequently asked in interviews, regarding duplicate rows and all that. So when we select data from a table, okay, when we select data from a table, what happens basically is that all the rows on that table are going to show up. So let me show this with the help of an example. Let us say I do select department ID from departments. What do I have? Select department ID from departments. Okay, now I'm going to employees. I'm going to do this from employees. So you can see that the department ID is repeating. Now why is it repeating? It is repeating because let's look at the data in employees. Why is this repeating? This is repeating simply because, where is the department ID? Yeah, this is simply repeating because more than one people belong to the same department. Okay. Why? Because more than one people belong to the same department. So I work in the IT department of a company. So there are several other people who work in the same department. So all of us are going to get assigned the same department ID. So if I select department ID from employees, what I'm going to see is that I'm going to see the same what is known as department IDs repeated again and again. What do I see? I see the same department IDs repeated again and again. So what I could do is that so before I do that, let me count the number of rows. So I see that I have 106 rows now. Now what I do is that I do a distinct. Now if I do a distinct, let me do a count. I see only 11 rows. So what basically it has done is that all occurrences, so if there were 5 occurrences of 90, the distinct keyword reduced it to just one occurrence of 90. So what does the distinct keyword do? The distinct keyword basically removes all duplicates and displays what is known as the repeating values only once. So typically if you wanted to know all the departments for which employees are assigned, you could simply do a distinct here and that would take care of it. Any questions, Vinod, about distinct?
No, Sujit.
Okay. Shrikant? Sorry, Shashi. Okay, so it is not written here, but I want to talk about what is known as distinct with more than one columns. Okay, these are all ISQL plus, so we can ignore it. It's described. This is all ISQL plus. ISQL plus, we can ignore this. Okay, so it is actually not written here, but let me just talk about little more about distinct. So here in this particular case, what I did is that I did distinct on one column. I did distinct on one column. Now I could have but there are scenarios where I could do distinct on more than one column. Okay, so let us say that I have first name comma last name from employees. So what do I have? I have first name and I have last name. Okay, now if let us say that so what I'm going to first do is that I'm going to do select distinct first name from employees. One second, let me first. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm just going to select first name from employees. I'm going to get a count. I got 106 rows. Now what I'm doing is that I'm doing a distinct of first name. I got 91 rows. So what this basically means is that there are people with the same first name repeating inside the employees table. What does it mean? It means that there are people, so you can see here Alexander Ronald, Alexander Khu. So they both have the same first name. So when I do a distinct of first name, what happens is that it suppresses this Alexander and Alexander to give me only one Alexander. But let us say now I add this last name also here. Let us say I add this last name also here, and now I run this. Now you can see, in spite of the fact that I wrote distinct, Alexander is present twice. So who can tell me why that is so? Vinodha?
I'm still confused. It when you say distinct, it takes distinct of both first name as well as the last name, I guess. That's why.
That's
But I'm
right.
not really sure.
That is absolutely correct. It's looking for a combination distinct.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically looking for a combination distinct. So if Alexander Hunold actually occurred twice inside this table, what it would have done is that it would have suppressed it.
Yeah.
But because the last names are different, these both as a combination, these both as a combination are not distinct. So for that reason, when you add more columns, it's always, I can add a third column also, middle name. So it's always going to look for a combination of the first name and last name, or whatever columns you have added, and look for distinct combinations of them, and not only, the first column that you have written.
But what if I want just the first column to be distinct and the rest of them not distinct?
Yeah,
Is there a way?
so yeah, there is a way. So basically you're saying is that you want to continue to display the last name,
Mm-hmm.
but so let me ask you this. If I have Alexander Hunold and Alexander Khu, okay, if you want me to, let us say, display only the first name, then which last name should it take?
Okay.
You're understanding my question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Uh,
there is a way to do what you have said, but you have to answer my question, which one. So when we do group functions later,
mhm.
okay, there is a mechanism to deal with this, wherein,
Okay.
if let us say you say that you really don't care which last name,
Okay.
but you just want any one combination, or you
Okay.
don't care which first name, but only the last one combination of the last name is required, you can do that. But ultimately, we have to make that decision as to, which one of these two we want.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so, that is the critical thing. But yeah, there are ways to do it, and, I have also encountered requirements where, I have actually, been asked to do that. So yeah, it is a very valid scenario. Uh, so I think that basically, concludes today's class. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.